The world of Indian geopolitics has once again entered a zone of unpredictable turbulence, where every move made by New Delhi seems to ripple across continents. From Washington to Moscow, from Beijing to Kabul, every major power is watching India's next step. The latest developments unfolding behind closed doors signal something bigger than diplomacy. They signal a new power equation taking shape. And India is right in the center of it. Over the past few weeks, India's foreign policy has not just adapted to global shifts. It has started defining them. And now the buzz in diplomatic circles suggests that New Delhi is preparing to take one of the boldest geopolitical steps in recent years. A move that could permanently alter the balance of influence in South Asia. Insiders describe what's happening as India's grand realignment. A multi-layered strategy that goes beyond trade, defense, or energy. It's about rewriting India's role as a global power. No longer reactive, but assertive, strategic, and self-assured. At the heart of this realignment lies a remarkable convergence of timing. The United States is heading toward another election season filled with uncertainty. Russia is deepening its outreach toward Asian markets. China is pushing its Belt and Road projects deeper into South Asia, and the Taliban-led Afghanistan is becoming a focal point of competing interests. And just as the world thought India would play safe, New Delhi made a move that caught everyone off guard, signaling its readiness to reopen its embassy in Kabul, engage directly with the Taliban, and shape the Afghan narrative on its own terms. Western analysts didn't see it coming. For years, India's Afghan policy was rooted in cautious diplomacy, avoiding direct engagement with the Taliban after their 2021 takeover. But the tide has turned. India is now stepping into Afghanistan not as a spectator but as a stakeholder, and that in itself is a geopolitical earthquake. Sources inside the Indian Foreign Ministry reveal that the decision to upgrade the Kabul mission was sudden. It was months in the making. Intelligence agencies, diplomats, and security advisors all played their part. India had already maintained a technical team in Kabul for humanitarian and developmental assistance. But now it's moving toward full diplomatic representation, something that will redefine the balance of influence in Afghanistan. This move comes at a time when Pakistan's relationship with the Taliban is under severe strain. Border clashes, trade disputes, and airstrike accusations have shattered the once brotherly image between Islamabad and Kabul. That vacuum has created an opening, and India is seizing it with precision. By engaging with the Taliban pragmatically, New Delhi is not recognizing the regime formally, but acknowledging geopolitical reality. It's a fine line, but one that India has mastered walking. Meanwhile, Washington is watching closely. U.S. officials, while cautious, privately admit that India's presence in Kabul could actually help stabilize Afghanistan, something Western forces failed to do for 2 decades. But there's a catch. The U.S. doesn't want India's deepening relations with Moscow and Tehran to blend into its Afghan engagement. Yet that's exactly what's happening. India's strategy is built on multipolar partnerships, maintaining ties with the U.S. while deepening cooperation with Russia and Iran. This approach gives India flexibility and leverage in a region where every player has conflicting agendas. For example, Iran's Chabahar port, which India helped develop, is emerging as a key trade route for Afghanistan, bypassing Pakistan completely. That corridor, if expanded, could reshape regional commerce and undercut Pakistan's traditional chokehold over Afghan access routes. Russia, on the other hand, has quietly supported India's engagement in Afghanistan. Moscow views India as a stabilizing counterbalance to Western influence and an essential partner in any Asian-led security architecture. Recent meetings between Indian and Russian officials have reportedly discussed coordination on energy, defense logistics, and Afghanistan's reconstruction. In this emerging triangle, India, Russia, and Iran, New Delhi is crafting a new axis of stability that bypasses Western dominance and Chinese expansionism. The idea is simple but powerful. Create an independent regional order rooted in cooperation, not confrontation. And that's what makes India's next moves so unpredictable and so potent. Inside New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy team is being described as one of the most strategically agile in decades. They understand that India's rise will not come from choosing sides, but from shaping outcomes. In Afghanistan, India is leveraging its soft power, education, healthcare, infrastructure to rebuild credibility. Unlike Western powers that rely on military dominance, India is offering what Afghanistan truly needs: stability, investment, and respect. Afghan officials, even within the Taliban, have privately praised India for maintaining diplomatic courtesy and non-interference. It's a sharp contrast to the coercive diplomacy they often face from neighboring countries. For India, this approach serves a dual purpose. It enhances goodwill among ordinary Afghans while limiting Pakistan's influence on Afghan soil. However, this bold diplomacy also comes with risks. Domestically, critics are questioning whether engaging with the Taliban undermines India's moral position on democracy and women's rights. Internationally, some Western allies fear it might legitimize a regime known for its harsh governance. But Indian officials are clear: engagement does not mean endorsement. The world may have reservations, but India is driven by realism, not rhetoric. In the words of one senior diplomat, we cannot afford to look away from our own neighborhood. Afghanistan's stability directly affects India's security. That statement sums up the essence of New Delhi's foreign policy today: pragmatic, proactive, and unafraid of controversy. At the same time, India's diplomacy is expanding on multiple fronts. With the U.S., discussions are underway to finalize new defense frameworks that include advanced drone technology and semiconductor partnerships. With Europe, India is negotiating trade deals to boost exports and diversify supply chains. And with the Global South, India continues to champion equitable development and energy access, positioning itself as the voice of emerging economies. But behind all this, there's a common thread: strategic autonomy. India is building relationships that serve its national interest, not alliances that limit its options. This multidimensional strategy is redefining India's global image. No longer is it seen as a passive democracy balancing between powers. It's now perceived as an active shaper of the New World Order, a nation that can talk to Washington and Moscow, Riyadh and Tehran, Beijing and Tokyo, all in the same week. The current geopolitical moment reflects India's evolution from a regional power to a global influencer. And what's remarkable is the confidence with which New Delhi is handling pressure. When Western nations questioned India's oil trade with Russia, the response from Indian officials was firm and unapologetic. They reminded the world that Europe was still importing energy through loopholes, while India was simply ensuring affordable fuel for its citizens. That level of assertiveness marks a new chapter in India's diplomacy, one that prioritizes national interest over external approval. On the security front, India's intelligence cooperation with multiple partners has deepened significantly. Joint operations with the U.S. on counterterrorism, real-time intelligence exchanges with Israel, and maritime surveillance coordination with France and Japan. All these measures show how India is strengthening its defense posture without joining formal military blocs. Meanwhile, the Indian Navy's recent joint exercises in the Arabian Sea with the U.S. and Australia signal that India's Indo-Pacific strategy remains strong and focused on maritime stability. Every move is calculated, every step designed to balance cooperation with independence. As the global energy map continues to shift, India is also positioning itself as a new energy hub. The government's investments in renewable energy, strategic oil reserves, and nuclear technology are part of a larger plan to reduce dependency and increase bargaining power. In fact, analysts believe that India's dual engagement with Russian crude and American technology will make it one of the most resilient energy economies of the decade. The future of power, both literally and geopolitically, may very well depend on how effectively India manages this transition. Meanwhile, China is growing increasingly uneasy. Beijing's Belt and Road projects have hit resistance across Asia. And India's expanding partnerships threaten to undercut its influence in South Asia. India's engagement with Central Asian republics, its growing defense presence in the Indian Ocean, and its quiet diplomacy in Southeast Asia are all part of a larger containment strategy, not through confrontation, but through connection. By building partnerships and offering alternatives, India is slowly neutralizing Chinese influence without firing a single shot. Back home, public sentiment strongly supports this new assertive foreign policy. Indians today feel that their country finally commands global respect, that it speaks from a position of strength, not submission. Whether it's standing up to Western pressure, engaging with adversaries, or shaping global discussions, India's diplomatic playbook is driven by confidence and clarity. The results are visible: record foreign investment, growing defense exports, and rising international influence in forums like the G20, BRICS, and the SCO. The next few months could be decisive. As global elections, energy transitions, and conflicts reshape alliances, India's choices will carry enormous weight. The reopening of the Kabul embassy, the balancing act between Russia and the West, and the quiet coordination with Iran could redefine the Asian order for decades. Each move is being watched, analyzed, and debated in world capitals. But what's certain is this: India is no longer playing on someone else's board. It's designing its own. In this new age of multipolar geopolitics, where power is dispersed and narratives are constantly shifting, India's approach stands out for one reason: balance. It is neither confrontational nor submissive, neither isolationist nor dependent. It's strategic, adaptive, and deeply and that's precisely why the world is paying attention. Whether in Kabul or Washington, Moscow or Beijing, everyone knows one truth now: the era of underestimating India is over. The next chapter of global geopolitics will not be written in Washington or Beijing alone. It will be written in New Delhi by a nation that has learned from its past, mastered the art of diplomacy, and is now ready to lead on its own terms. The world's political map may still be divided by borders, but the power lines are shifting, and they all seem to be converging toward one destination: India.